Ladies and gentlemen, Six Fig Stock Trader here from YouTube today, and I've got a very interesting video and special guest lined up. So let's get into this. So I'd like to welcome to the show Jordan Mack. Jordan, thank you for being here today. Jordan is going to be talking about some interesting headlines, some speculation on whether we're in a bear market, things like that, kind of things he's interested in as far as the crypto industry goes as a individual and not necessarily, representing any cryptocurrency or foundation. Is that right, Jordan?
Yeah, that's right. Today I'm here as myself, as an investor and a developer in the industry, but I'm not representing any company today.
Awesome. Well, I do appreciate you being here today. I know that everybody loved that last video that you did with me when we were talking about Nervos and things like that. So hopefully they can find some good value in this video too. And I think that we got kind of a nice lineup and, in store for everybody today. What are your thoughts on the bear market, bull market? Do you know what are you kind of feeling right now? I know Bitcoin has really had a nice last few days. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying it yet, though.
Yeah. This is a tough one. I've been through a lot of different bear markets in the past and bull markets, and every time when you're in it, you don't really know what's going on. It always seems there's a lot of unknowns. But I would say this though: in the past, the bear markets that you could see were easier to detect. And part of the reason for that is we had much less adoption. Really, Bitcoin was pretty much an unknown, and also with Ethereum too. There was a small segment of the population that was the enthusiasts that were really into it, and they were pushing the price up and down or whatever. But there was no real world adoption. And when you see those gigantic peaks, when it goes parabolic, and there's no real adoption, it's a little bit obvious that there's something going on. It's probably some kind of a bubble. But this time around, we've actually seen institutional investors for the first time for real. Like last bull market, we kind of predicted it. It was right at the edge, but it didn't turn that corner. Now we're starting to see that for real. And we're also seeing incredible levels of spending and by the government, inflation all around at a level that we've never seen in the world ever before globally like this. And I don't think that it's possible to fully stop. The Federal Reserve, they've made statements about tightening, and they very well may try to do that, but it is tremendously hard to pull liquidity out of the system. It's easy to print money and throw it in. There's no problem with that. Getting it back out again without toppling over the economy might be impossible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that as far as the whole spending and printing money, they're in way over their heads, and I don't know. I think that crypto, like you said, their bear markets have been different, and I like the good analogy that you made where you had the blow off top without any real backing. That makes a lot of sense, and we really haven't seen that blow off top happen. We've seen an incredible run, especially with Bitcoin from the coronavirus lows to the to the most recent highs, and we really haven't seen that blow off top with a huge crash. I mean, it's crashed. The market's kind of been a little wishy washy the last few months, but it seems to be staying solvent to some extent. So I think just with all this extra adoption that's going on, things like that, we are definitely kind of braving out these bear markets, or hopefully they will become a little bit shorter and not as severe as previous cycles. I'm really hoping that we start to see like a shortening, bear cycles. I'm hoping that doesn't happen with the bullish side of things, but it certainly could turn more into a gradual increases and decreases over time. A little stability would be nice in that respect.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing I want to add to that, and I want to be fair and say the other side of it, is that while we have seen more adoption, definitely with institutional investors and all like that, it doesn't necessarily dictate the price, right? That there's a supply and demand thing that's going on, but there's still bubbles that can occur, even if we're seeing real institutional demand. And there's also the flip side of this, which is even if we are seeing adoption, and there's a lot of adoption, a lot of DApp stuff going on, there's still a tremendous amount of speculation in the market. It's not it's not really true usage yet, and part of that is
Hmm.
because the technology just isn't there yet. When Ethereum is costing 50, 100, sometimes 150, $200 a transaction, that is not something that's sustainable in the real world for a long period of time, right? And even with all the bridges that are being built to other chains, those are like the BSC, Polygon, Nervos. The fees on one side of that bridge, the Ethereum side, are still very high. So going back and forth is still a huge amount of friction. And so, I mean, these are just more and more challenges that we see out there right now that are preventing this from really getting to the next level of true adoption.
Hmm.
There are those out there that argue with me that saying that we saw real adoption with NFTs. I don't think so. I think this is still really really early.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Um, right now it seems like NFT art is all the rage. Is it going to settle down? Maybe, but I think that we'll see all these other, like NFT audio, NFT video. I mean, I'm just thinking ahead here. Like, NFT art is the dominant NFT stuff right now, and I'm sure it has, um, helped people get into cryptocurrency and stuff like that. But is it a fad? It could be. And I like how you kind of mentioned, these barriers of entry for Ethereum and stuff like that, and sending money. And I had this discussion with somebody on Twitter the other day, and of course, when you start trying to win arguments against people on the internet, it just seems like you're going down the rabbit hole. But I was just kind of saying how Ethereum has really held back the entire growth of the crypto industry. Possibly, it's so popular, but with these high gas fees, and I had seen somebody tweeted out that they tried to send $45 to somebody, and it was the gas fees at the time were 200 and something dollars or something crazy like that. So it was like this barrier of entry, and around that, I think is going to hold the entire crypto industry back until they get that problem fixed. And I don't know if it will be fixed. It's kind of been one of these. At least this is just what I'm thinking. It kind of seems like it's been a promise after promise to get it fixed. Um, I don't know. That's just
It's
kind
not.
of where I'm at.
Yeah. It's not an easy problem to solve. And realistically, I think when people go out there, or even companies go out there and say we have a solution to the blockchain trilemma, that's simplified speech for saying we have found workarounds to shift it around in a different way.
Mhm.
Ultimately, like the trilemma is not something that I believe is solvable, not without some kind of a miraculous innovation in technology, which very well may never happen. Right, like
Mhm.
some of there's chains out there that are betting on innovations in storage or something that we get holographic storage, which ends our dependency on existing hard drives and basically enabling unlimited amount of storage of data. That, yeah, I agree that would be great, but I've been reading that headline for 10 to 15 years, right?
Mhm.
In the scientific news, um, clickbait headlines that have run through, and I don't think we're really any closer to getting that. So I don't count
Yeah.
on that happening. I don't count on an innovation just removing our problems. And if that doesn't happen, the trilemma will not be solved. And I actually think that it goes a little bit beyond trilemma. I actually consider it to be a quadrilemma, if you will, maybe even
Hmm.
more than that. It just gets much harder to comprehend what they're actually doing. But you can shift these elements around in different ways, and one of those is by time, which is why some of the blockchains out there, a lot of them, the first iteration of a bridge that they have between the two, the withdrawal takes several days, sometimes a
Hmm.
week or more. It's because they're exploiting that. To me, that is the fourth point on the quadrilemma, is actually time, and by increasing the time they can increase um, the dependency on some of the other aspects of the trilemma. And so they're still playing around with this. And the truth is that there's not really one answer to all of this, because it's not a one size all fits all solution on all of these things. there are definitely going to be cases where you're just moving around $20 or what was it,
Hmm.
$45 or something. You don't need the same level of security that somebody is moving around millions of dollars does, and it should be faster for that. And we need to be able to enable these channels to actually exist, and that's something that the industry is still struggling with to move forward on, because there's no guiding principle here that will tell you exactly what that balance should be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, especially when it comes to moving like that $45 to a few hundred thousand. It's frustrating when your money is tied up, um, regardless what dollar amount it is. So yeah, that's interesting take on that for sure. Um, kind of getting into some of these notes. Thank you for uh, providing some awesome talking points today. But talking and getting into like trading strategies, do you have any personal trading strategies that you follow? Do you trade much, or do you get into any of that, or are you just kind of a
Um,
hodler?
I'm mostly just hold. In the past, I have done a little bit of trading. I've looked at TA a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm nowhere near as good as you guys. I basically was just scratching the surface, and a lot of it was just me looking for those parabolic movements. Right, when you get these obvious movements, all of a sudden your decisions become a little bit more clear. But in the past, I've been successful. There was a couple times where I perfectly timed the peak on a sale, and there's
Nice.
also been times where I missed it just completely. Right. So, I mean, I'd say I'm probably like 50-50 on that kind of stuff. And at this point in my life, I've done best just by holding. And that's because I'm pretty good at selecting the projects that I invest in. And my timeline is wide open. I invest in a way where I'm looking at 5 to 10 years, possibly longer, before I sell anything. And the only exception to that, the only time I've really ever sold anything, is because I had to pay taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm kind of a yeah, I'm kind of split 50-50 between trading and hodling myself. Even though that's like the primary focus of this channel, stuff like that. For me, I found that I've become, if there's an obvious trade to be made in the crypto world, I'll make it, but it's not at the high frequencies like I do within like the stock market. So for me, I do a lot of trading. As far as like the stock market is concerned, that's more of like my bread and butter, where I can trade stocks and options. And one strategy that I like to have with that, just personally, is when I trade my options, any profits that I get out of those trades, and usually I'm not holding those things for more than 2 or 3 days, the contracts. Uh, but I will take the profits, roll them into stocks or crypto, for that matter, as kind of like my store of value. Take these profits. It's free. Well, it's not free. It required my time to make these trades, but I kind of like to, trade, in the stock markets to um, boost my crypto portfolios and stock holdings. But yeah, as far as like the crypto world goes, I'm more of a hodler, man. I'm kind of like you. I like to dollar cost average like everybody else. Just kind of make these obvious movements. It's just sometimes not trading is uh, is the best thing you can do, especially if you have like this 5 to 10 year plan. I'm right there with you. I've
Yeah.
got some bags that, if 2 to 5 years, 10 years go down the line, I've got some key points that I will start selling, crypto and stocks at. Number one being like, okay, this is going to pay off this house here, whatever. If I can, I don't know, I kind of have like my bags, assigned to paying off different things over time, if
Yeah.
if it ever happens.
Do you do anything with like the moon bag strategy? That's the one that like Wendy O pushes a lot.
Yeah, and she is actually pretty amazing when it comes to these moonbag stuff that she holds. I followed several of her. Uh, I'm not up to date on her actual strategy behind it, but I have followed her a few times on a few different bags that kind of blew up. Solana was actually one of them when she started talking about Solana. I built a little bit of a bag there, but yeah, I just kind of like to, uh, you know, if you can throw $500 into something, okay, this seems decent. There's that potential for this 10 to 20x that can happen. Okay, that seems that I don't know.
I've done some of that. I've done some of that for sure. I mean, during the 2017 bull market, everybody was making money on ICOs, and so I
Mm,
took a couple where I researched them. I did not research them super heavily, right? So it was probably like an hour or less of research, and then I just threw a couple $100 or maybe even a
yeah.
couple grand into this thing, and just kind of left it there. And most of those projects haven't really done too well. I gotta
Mm,
say, like the ones that I really deeply invest in are the ones that I've spent many hours, probably many days researching and looking into whether I think this is going to be a truly long term play.
mhm. Let me ask you this question quick. So, like, you know, from from a professional blockchain engineer, developer standpoint, what are some of the types of things that you're looking at when you're making these investments? Is it a heavy audit of the white paper? Are you looking for anything in there that kind of arouses suspicion? Are you looking at the tokenomics behind the project? Who's on it, or who's founded the project? Are those some of the things that you're kind of looking for? Is there
Yeah,
maybe more in-depth information that you're seeking
yeah.
out?
There's actually it's all of those things. I mean, really, there's kind of like a 5 point thing I use, and the number one thing is vision. I'm looking for a project that actually has looked into the future a little bit and has something that they're really trying to change. A
Mhm.
project that doesn't have that would be a lot of the clone projects out there. They're not trying to do anything new. Their vision is simply to exist, and that for me, that's simply not enough.
Yeah.
I do look into the leadership involved with the company because I believe that is, especially in the early days, when something is really starting up before it hits any level of true decentralization, the leadership is very important in guiding that project forward and motivating developers to be involved with it and building a community and all that. So I do look at the leaders quite a bit, the founders, and not always just the founder. It's really whoever is involved with it in a leadership position.
Mhm.
And then I look at the developers involved. I want to know if they're actually confident, if they have, if do they actually have experience to pull something like this off? Because the blockchain projects are really deeply involved in technology, and making mistakes can lead to horrible hacks and all that, and people losing a lot of money. So I want to make sure
Mhm.
that it's a team with experience. And then I look for momentum in the project. And this is more of a long term thing. This is more watching the project to make sure that development is continuing and that the community is kind of growing and that the project is moving forward, that they actually have some type of a plan. And this is something that you really can't gauge just by doing an hour on the project. This is something that you have to watch over a course of months because it can start out great and fade, or it can kind of just
Mhm.
start out slow and then all of a sudden just start kicking ass like a lot of these projects do. I think Solana was kind of that way too, actually. I did follow Solana for a while, way back in the early days, and it took it years for it to really gain momentum and then just explode like it did.
Hmm.
And then the last thing that I really look at is community, because that's a really important part of any kind of a decentralized project. You need to make sure that that these people are out there and that they're actually engaging the project. Because even if the project has really great technology to it, if nobody's using it, if nobody's really following it, it's unfortunately it's not going to be that successful in the long run.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, that's definitely interesting, to see these projects that do come and go, and really, um, some of these projects that just kind of come out of the woodwork, like Solana did. It's impressive. But yeah, that's interesting. I figured that would kind of be your answer overall as far as what you're looking into. But um, yeah, let's talk about some NFT stuff. So I had you on my show last week for the Kami NFT reveals, and so you dabble with NFTs, but overall, are you like head over heels for it, or are you kind of just kind of sitting back and watching. What do you
Yeah,
think is going to happen with the
NFTs
whole
are
NFT thing?
yeah, NFTs are an interesting one for me because I was not one of the people who originally saw it and said this is the future. It took me a while to really understand what it was about. Back when CryptoKitties first out, I pretty much dismissed it as just a game, and that I was not serious at all about it. But then I realized a couple of years later that NFTs had potential far beyond little cat pictures, right? Far beyond collectibles, and really actually being a way to tie it into the real world and represent anything. One of the goals that I share with a lot of people and have always shared is the possibility of the tokenization of everything that they call it, right? Where you really start adding all kinds of real world objects to the blockchain and unleashing their liquidity and being able to use it in new ways.
Hmm.
That's something that is brought to life really by NFTs in a lot of ways. And I see NFTs as possibly being the uh, the driving force between that will make ownership actually possible on the internet, right? It will
Hmm.
be the sole form of actual ownership. And the reason for that is because in the past this was not possible. If you had, let's say, like, video game items are the easiest to describe here. If you owned a video game item on a typical video game, a sword in Diablo or something, right? That resides on Blizzard's servers. That is their property. It's not assigned to your account, but that is their property. Now, with an NFT, it can be a little bit different because that resides in a decentralized system. Even if Blizzard, wanted to take that sword back or something, they necessarily can't do that.
Hmm.
It depends on these are fine lines on depending on what blockchain you're talking about. But the ones that have, like, Nervos has first class assets, for example, which is a property that guarantees ownership, and several other chains will probably have something similar, where it doesn't matter who created the smart contract, who created the item originally, they can't get it back. And so that tying into NFTs means something very distinctually different, right? For the possibility of the future, the possibility of the metaverse, where physical property may actually be displaced by digital property in many respects. You need a way to track that. You need a way that is actually somewhat in line with how we deal with property today. If I buy something from the store, I have it in my house, and I can do whatever I want within my house. The store can't really come back to and just come and take it away or update it without my express permission or something. That doesn't necessarily exist in a digital space, except when you're on a decentralized blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be kind of messed up if Walmart was or Target or whatever your favorite store says, "Okay, we're coming over to inspect your soap dispenser to make sure you're not using it as much as you should be." Like that. Just that whole idea just is crazy to me. But I had this discussion with a friend yesterday. I was showing him my Kami NFTs that I bought, and he was asking me, he says, "You actually paid money for these?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I did. I actually enjoy this artwork. I think it's pretty cool stuff, and I own it. Like it's mine. I can do whatever I want with it." Um, and then I started, and he just couldn't wrap his head around that idea. And I said, "There's a bigger picture to these NFTs than you might actually realize." And this is probably the first time he's actually ever realized that he was even looking at an NFT. He's just not into crypto very much at all. Anyways, I was telling him how, eventually, just imagine if you could securely transfer car titles or music, whatever it is that you want, can basically be put into an NFT and secured on blockchain. So I mean, there's just I think we're yeah, just man, I just can't help but to think what other uses we will see in the next 2 to 5 years as far as like people storing, as far as like whatever it is that they're storing as an NFT on the blockchain, what that type of thing will be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a long way for it to still go. I mean, right now we're still just dabbling in basic images. There's some projects that
Hmm.
have done some audio, they've done some video and all that, but ultimately we're mostly just dealing with pictures. I mean, that's so fundamentally basic.
Hmm.
You got to wonder, like, where is it going to actually be in 5 to 10 years? I mean, there's been certain things that have direct application to this. Like, for example, Music and video games, I think, are really great ones when you talk
Mhm.
about ownership. Like there was a big shift from discs to just downloading online with video games, right? You used to always
It's
have
true.
a CD or DVD. And then one of the biggest criticisms with that was that you couldn't resell it. Once you had if you didn't have a physical disc, you could no longer resell this game. And that was very
Mhm.
unattractive for some. I mean, something like this actually enables that again. You could again sell these digital items online. You could do that with video games, and you could also do that with music. There's a lot of people who are just using stuff like Spotify, where you're not really buying songs again, but artists they still want you to buy their music.
Mhm.
And I like to support artists too. I've bought music in the past. I continue to buy digital music today, but there's a very different feel to it when you're not getting that physical disc anymore.
Mhm.
It's almost just like a symbolic thing. This NFTs could take it beyond that, back into a realm where it actually makes sense again, right? Where you're actually buying the music and the NFT is controlling your access to that music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just like you made a good point there. It NFTs really have opened up this world for artists just to sell like, you know, art like pictures and stuff like that. But when it comes to like that music side of things, man, there's going to be a lot of, musicians out there that will now be able to sell their work easier to a lot more people. So yeah, that's definitely interesting stuff. I mean, man, I could go on and on about the whole NFT stuff, and um, it's
Yeah,
it's fun to speculate about the future.
right. It absolutely is. But here, I want to answer just very quickly. The second part of your question is, what do I actually dabble in? Like, I've bought a couple NFTs here and there. I don't really consider them to be investments in my portfolio. The ones
Mhm.
that I'm buying because I really, really like the work and I want to support the artist. Or I have several that were given to me as gifts, and those are not for sale. I'm just going to hold those forever. I actually have two from you and a bunch of other people in the community. So that's kind of what NFTs mean to me. But in terms of an investment, I generally don't, because I have no way of actually quantifying the value on most of these NFTs. I think that most of them will probably lose value in the long term. There's definitely a few out there that are going to just become the Mona Lisas of the future, and those will be
Mhm.
worth a tremendous amount. I don't have the ability to pick those out. I don't know what they are. So I'm not really speculating in that regard.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat with you. I just there's so many NFT projects, and to try to keep your finger on all the pulse of every project, what the sentiment is at any given time, it's super hard. And yeah, trying to predict, which ones are going to blow up. Like, I mean, who would have ever thought that crypto punks or Bored Ape Yacht Club would become as popular as they have been? It's incredible to me. But yeah, I'm I'm right there with you. I just don't have my finger on the pulse enough to really consider it solid investments in my portfolio as well. So, well, what kind of other projects are you interested in?
I'm interested in quite a bit of projects. I mean, this is a kind of a tough one. There's the ones that I think that are very interesting, which is there's a lot of dApps out there that I've saw are interesting. A lot of projects that are trying to address various needs. I think they're all interesting. I don't necessarily invest in them though, just because it's sometimes I see it as limited scope, and by the time that I've actually heard about it, it's already gotten a bunch of hype on it. So it's no longer something that I consider an early investment. It would be a late stage speculative investment, and that's not something that I generally get into.
Hmm.
So, I mean, most of the investments I've made, the projects that I follow, tend to be still the base layers. That's going to be mostly Ethereum, Cardano, Nervos, maybe one or two others. I'm really watching what they actually do, because they're working right now on the foundation of blockchain ecosystems. And just at this stage, like we just talked about earlier, the base stage is not done yet. It is not even near done yet. It doesn't work right. I mean, so like there's still a lot of challenges that we have to get through. So that's kind of where my focus is. Once that stuff shows a lot more refinement, then I'll probably start to focus more on higher levels. But it's going to be a while before we actually get there.
Yeah, definitely. I I mean, I know crypto's been around for a while now, but really we have started to see this massive movement of development only within the last, I don't know, probably since Ethereum's rolled around 5 6 years maybe. And I just can't help but to think I tell this to other people too, and I just feel like we're back in that time frame of like Windows 97. Like there's just so much more to come. um, we've seen the very beginning of like Bitcoin maybe being like, I don't know, Windows 94. You kind of get what I'm saying. I feel like we are still truly early, no matter um, you know no matter what people say. I think we're still so early in the whole entire crypto industry as a whole. I just, as far as the developmental stages go, to you know future prices of projects go. I mean, I just feel like we're still so early. I don't know if you get that same feeling or what your thoughts are on
I
about that.
definitely do. I this back in, let's say it was the early 2000s. So that was when I was brand new to the tech community. I was starting to have my first jobs and everything, and we had the .com crash there. And immediately before that, of course, I was still a tech enthusiast. I'd been following a lot of the projects that were rolling around, and there's parallels that you can draw between those projects and projects today, which is they're highly experimental. Some of them will fail just because they were too early to the market,
Hmm.
even if they were great ideas, and other ones were just terrible ideas. Like I can give you a couple examples. For example, an idea that was great and just didn't succeed was something like Webvan, grocery delivery services, right? They came out to market, but the infrastructure was not in place. Their costs were way too high. They were unable to be successful. But that model still succeeded later on. It was picked up by the grocery stores themselves. I used to use Safeway delivery service all the time. I loved that service. I'd be on my lunch break or something. I'd do my shopping. When I got home, I'd already be done with the shopping, right? It'd
Yeah.
just be at my door. I mean, I love those services, and they're used all kinds of the Postmates and the Grubhub and all that kind of stuff are derivatives of that, right? Those are descendants of the originals, and those are dominating the markets right now. People are actually willing to pay a hefty premium so they don't have to leave their house. It's for the convenience, and who knows what they're doing with their time. Maybe they're relaxing, maybe they're actually just trying to finish up their work. They're actually it might be a cost advantage for them to do so because they can spend that extra hour working and earning a wage, which is higher than what they paid to the delivery person. But on the flip side of that, there were projects that were just terrible that I saw back in the early 2000s as well. Like for example, there was this one that was it was like a mouse pad with extra buttons on it, and when you would press these buttons, it would put ads on your screen. Yeah, yeah, it was probably the one of the worst projects I've ever seen in my life, and I would never use this ever for anything. But somehow they convinced investors to give them probably a couple $1 million to produce this thing. And once it hit market, it of course bombed. Nobody wants more ads, and they're not going to pay for a product to deliver more ads to them. It was absurd. But you see that, of course, there's parallels with that in crypto, which are these projects that just they don't make sense. They truly do not make sense. But investors are throwing money at them anyway, just to give it a shot.
That's crazy, man. Like, I couldn't imagine having a mouse pad where you. So was it actually like a? Do you remember if it was like an actual like physical button that you had to push, or was it just like if your mouse rolled over this part of the mouse pad, it would just pop up something? Or
Yeah, I think it was kind of a hard click where you'd have to really push on it
jeez.
to. So I don't think, but it's possible. Like the mouse, if you're moving on the pad, it might have hit it in the exact. Like, there's no scenario that you want this. There's no scenario that you would ever want this thing on your computer. But somehow somebody thought it was a good idea, and they convinced other people it was a good idea too.
Yeah, it just that I can't wrap my head around that thought process of what that would be useful. Man, I don't know. I could see if maybe you're trying to. I can't. Maybe I'm not. I can't see any useful reason why we'd want that. That's crazy. Oh man. Yeah, that's funny though. Yeah, I don't know. What a terrible idea that was.
It's
Well,
probably a pretty good collector's item at this point. That's the funny
yeah.
thing about it.
Oh man, I tell you what, every once in a while, I'll be coming across like some of these nostalgia posts, and somebody will say like, "Who had one of these?" and it will be like an old floppy disk of, I don't know, your favorite Apple game, like the Oregon Trail or something, and like only people during that time would recognize it. But hey, I'd love to throw a copy of that up on my wall or something. That's just kind of a cool talking piece. I don't know. So I could see where that, it kind of becomes like this antique in a way. That just a physical product might be worth something today. But how about you know, since we're kind of on like the topic of these other cryptos, you holding any meme coins? Do you dabble in meme coins, Dogecoin, Sheeb?
Mm,
Um,
not that much. I have I think I mined some Dogecoin at one point. This is way before it was popular. This is one of those where I absolutely did not think that this would blow up in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was a cute dog or whatever, but like meme coins, just in general, I generally don't get into it. Doesn't mean that you can't make money. Obviously, some people have made a tremendous amount of money, but again, this is one of those things where my expertise is in technology, and if I don't see the tech behind it, I can't really do a good job in quantifying the value. I can't really say that this is going to be something that's truly going to be remarkable in the future and really take over the market. It all comes down to brand recognition and hype, more or less, and those are definitely important. I don't want to excuse that. That's an important part of everything. That's one of the driving forces behind Bitcoin. Is obviously its brand recognition is tremendous, and that's probably its biggest selling point. I've said many times in the past, Bitcoin's biggest, most valuable feature is that it's Bitcoin, nothing more. Like the technology that Bitcoin has was ingenious for when it was invented, but by today's standards, it's a bit behind the curve. It's not really keeping up in regard. It doesn't do a lot of the things that a lot of other blockchains do. Doesn't mean it doesn't have value. I'm just saying that the technology there's a lot of directions that other projects are going and experimenting with, and Bitcoin is not keeping up in that regard, in my opinion. But it's not going away. It's definitely going to keep charging forward. When you look at the markets out there, it's still the dominating factor. When you look at when it's getting adopted, the headlines, like for example, El Salvador, that was on Bitcoin, and the Tonga, it's on Bitcoin. That's going to be the driving force for probably all crypto. So, and that's a big part of the reason I still back Bitcoin to this day. Is I do still own some, but I recognize it as being basically synonymous with the word cryptocurrency. There are people who don't know any other coin other than Bitcoin, and it's important for all cryptocurrency that even if it's just one coin that gets recognized, at least a coin got recognized, and we need to support that effort.
yeah, I agree with you 100% there. I just kind of feel like, um, you know, and part of me too, I'm guilty of this. Like, you know, some project I'll come right out and say, it's stupid, whatever, but other people like it. And, part of me is just like, okay, if other people like and believe in some of these projects, like that is a win for crypto as a whole. Not necessarily a win for, I guess that, it really does just kind of, I don't know, everything is just so intertwined together, no matter if you like this coin or that coin. Like we are all fighting under the same sword, so to speak, as far as when it comes to supporting the movement of decentralization, stuff like that. So yeah, I hear you. I'm not really a big meme coin guy myself. If I can get in on a run, make some money, I'll do that and get out. I can remember last summer when Sheeb was ripping off. I was doing some high level videography, and here I am trying to do my job and like trade Sheeb coin at the same time. So yeah, I will jump in on these meme coins for pure profit reasons. Just kind of playing the waves with them.
Yeah,
So
I hear you. I mean, if I was more of a trader, I'd probably be more interested in that. But it's like I'm so busy just with development
mhm.
and community building and all these types of things that I do just in my daily life that I can't dedicate any more time to
Yeah.
studying than I already am. So I focus on the ones that I feel are most important for the long term. And while I have to stay, yes, branding and recognition are definitely important. Those are not areas of my expertise, so I generally don't focus on them for long term type stuff. And
Mhm.
I wish, there's a part of me. There's a part of me that wishes I had gotten in early on Dogecoin, or at least
Yeah.
held on to what I mined or something. But um, it's like ultimately, who would have called that? Like, right? It's like who could really call that? Who could have backed that, justified that rise? Like, if you looked back several years and said, "This is the one that's going to be up there, and people are going to be cheering for." I don't think it was really predictable at all.
No, I think you're right on that. I mean, yeah, if you would have asked us, people, yeah, 5 years ago or however long ago, hey, did you know that billionaires will be backing this? You'll be able to pay in Dogecoin to go see a basketball game, like a real NBA basketball game. People would have called you crazy. Um, so yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
what's
know.
what's the what's the selling point of this coin? What's it good at? Oh, it has a picture of a dog on it.
Sometimes I think you're just like better off, I don't know, throwing darts at a dartboard. And I mean, what, depending on, where the dart lands, you'll invest or not invest or flip a
Oh,
coin or
sometimes. Did
something.
you hear about that hamster, the trading hamster?
I think somebody was telling me about it and it died recently, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it died recently. It
Maybe
died
I think I
right
heard of it
before.
from you.
You might have. We covered it on hashing it out right before
That's where I heard of it.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah, it had
Yep.
just passed away. They had a hamster that was it was hooked up, like they had this wheel. They rigged up its wheel so when it would run it in the wheel, it would like randomize a trade. And then depending on which tunnel it went through, they would either buy or sell. And I guess they like automated this whole process using sensors. And the hamster actually did pretty well. I believe they said that his trades were doing better than Warren Buffett's trades for
Yeah,
over that time period.
that's right. I remember hearing that now. Yeah, that just kind of proves the point. I'd love to see a hamster out trade. Uh, I wish the poor little guy wouldn't have died because I would have been all over that had I known it was around. But so, just to kind of channel off here, you think I hear a lot of people talking about like Bitcoin, $100,000 million level, and I was recently kind of talking to like my old man and my buddy's dad about this too, and they were kind of like um, taunting me about the crypto markets and saying, "Oh, I bet you wish you never invested in crypto. Now it's down like 10% this week." I said, 10%. Like that's a great week if it's down only 10%. Like this is crypto. You guys are clueless. But then I start telling them, I said, just wait. You're gonna see Bitcoin at 100,000. 5 to 10 years, I don't know when. You might see that $1 million Bitcoin someday. I mean, with 20 million of them out there, it's just inevitable that it'll happen. If as long as the current ecosystem for the crypto movement stays healthy, I think. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I could definitely see 100K at least, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we're
I
a
mean,
long
like
way off from a million though.
we're still a ways off from a million, but I mean, 100,000 is, I think, completely possible, especially if we see more global adoption, more countries get behind it. Like 100,000, that's no problem. We've seen movements in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that could get there in a day, right? That's another
Yeah.
100% gain. I mean, that's entirely possible. But even things that seem a little bit far out of reach, like $1 million Bitcoin, I actually think in the long term, it's definitely possible. And there's two ways for it to get there. Number one is the dollar could just go hyperinflation out of control, and then it costs couple $1,000s for a loaf of bread or something.
Mm,
But that's in that case, it doesn't really, it's the nominal value doesn't really matter anymore. But the in true value of it actually hitting a million, I do think that that is actually possible.
mhm,
And part of that is just because you got to realize that when you're looking at, for example, like a stock price for Amazon, and they give you this huge valuation, the people who own those shares, they cannot liquidate 100% of their shares and get that, right? They will tank the price. If Jeff Bezos sells everything, he's going to tank the price.
yeah,
His net worth calculation is not liquid. And the
right.
same goes for Bitcoin. It's basically whatever people will pay for it. It's I don't know what it is this week. 40,000 is Bitcoin or something. If it was
It's
50 or 60,000, I mean, like it could be the exact same holders involved with that. And maybe it didn't change at all, hands at all, but they all decided universally that it was just worth more. And maybe that has to do with global adoption or something. So, I mean, when you look at it in that kind of a perspective, that it might not even need to raise the price, might not need a huge injection of capital necessarily. It might just take more adoption, more recognition for something like that to happen. Then yes, I think $1 million Bitcoin completely possible. $10,000 Ethereum completely possible. And I'm
mhm.
actually surprised that Ethereum has not flipped past Bitcoin in some regard. I kind of thought it would a long time ago.
Well, yeah, that would be interesting if that does happen someday. And I could see where it very well could. Let's just say tomorrow, for example, they fix their gas fee problem, and it goes from um, proof of work to proof of stake. You see these gas fees just you know become like $1 a transaction or something like that. Like, wow, I can tell you, I would probably be interested in investing in more Ethereum from what I already have. So yeah, that'd be interesting to really see, uh, you know, if ETH will flip Bitcoin, or if some other projects will maybe flip ETH or Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Uh,
someday. I mean, we
yeah,
may see it someday. I mean, when I'm talking about like it flipping, I'm thinking probably within the next 5 years or so. But really, that's completely speculatory, right? I mean, like you can't underestimate the power of a brand, and Bitcoin is that brand right now.
yeah, yeah. That I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, everybody. Even if you don't follow cryptocurrency, you know what Bitcoin is. Perhaps even know the logo, and then that is the universal recognized cryptocurrency for sure. Let's see here. So, kind of talking about some of these other projects. Let's just say Nervos didn't exist. What else? What other kinds of things are you looking for in a grand scheme of things? As far as like trying to pick up on any projects, or
Let's see.
I should say this. I should say
Hmm.
any projects that you would consider working for.
Oh, that I consider working for. Yeah, there definitely are. I mean, the Ethereum ecosystem is something that I've looked at several times, and this was all before I'd actually heard of Nervos. It's
Hmm.
definitely there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of momentum, but at the same time, there's a lot of problems that are being worked on. And I mean, that's a good thing in terms of somebody who's a developer who actually wants to go in there and make a difference. I mean, there's a lot of room for that, but also resistance to that because it's an ecosystem that's already pushing forward. The Cardano ecosystem is also very interesting to me. That's one where it's actually has a lot of similarity to Nervos, and that's probably where I suspect I would end up if Nervos had never been invented, all right, if it
Hmm.
didn't exist, because it's got a similar approach to a lot of things. It's also UTXO based. It's a new ecosystem, which to me is more fun to be involved with, and I think it has a lot of potential for the future as well. And then, of course, privacy coins are something that I've always had an interest in. So there's plenty of those around too. I think that's one of the areas of the future that still needs to see more development, more adoption. Actually, is in the privacy aspect. It's a controversial topic, but ultimately, I think that the benefits of privacy outweigh the problems that it brings in. And I'd like to really see all of these coins, all of the big ones, Ethereum, uh, um, Bitcoin, Cardano, and Nervos, and all of these other ones adopt some type of privacy protocol or layer or something in there that enables it, maybe optionally, right? Maybe you don't have to, but the ability for their users to be able to access that.
Yeah, I no, privacy is a big thing, um, and I do think that uh, you know every time you start talking about privacy coins and things like that, then people always bring up, oh, they're going to be used for illegal purposes and stuff like that. And I have to just remind these people, the U.S. dollar has serial numbers on it, and it is used for the most crimes, pretty much. Um, it's used to finance the most crimes everywhere in the world. So it's just even that little physical dollar um, wreaks havoc as far
Well,
as
yeah,
like supporting criminal transactions. Like it's going to happen whether it's privacy or not. Like yeah, so
yeah,
I agree.
absolutely.
I definitely want that. I think everybody is that's something that everybody wants, the ability to pull down the blinds on the window from time to time. So it's a big deal. So
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, and people don't seem to always realize that on the blockchain right now, you're pseudo anonymous when you're on any chain that doesn't have privacy. Basically, the reason you're pseudo anonymous is primarily because the technology to truly analyze these transactions doesn't fully exist. But one day it will, and everything you do will be tracked. They'll know exactly, for the most part, what you're buying, who you spent it, and whatever. It's and even when you start to look at some of the things that the unfortunate things in politics that go on with people trying to pin stuff on other people, their enemies or whatever, you got to realize that this can happen to you as an individual as well if you become a political enemy, especially in countries where this stuff goes on all the time,
mhm.
where they're trying to blame each other for things they didn't do. Like, what if you were a shop owner and a gangster came into your store, bought a donut, and left, and they were tracking his funds, and now the cashier gives an innocent person change with those funds. There's now a direct connection, traceable connection between that gangster and the person who just came in after him. This can be misconstrued in a lot of ways. They could use this as a way to blame people for something that did not happen at all.
Mhm.
And so this is unfortunate thing that you have to take into consideration that this is actually this is real, especially in certain areas of the world where they're playing really dirty tricks. They do this stuff, and it needs to be fixed, in my opinion, and it far outweighs the problems that occur as a result of privacy coins or even mixers or something like that. And it really comes down to this one thing: just endorsing privacy is not endorsing criminal activity. And it's if somebody's doing something illegal, just because they used a privacy coin doesn't make it any less illegal. They're still doing an activity that could be tracked in other ways. I see it as the police; they're just going to have to do a different way of investigation, right? Well, actually, it's probably closer to what it is now. I mean, they won't gain a new tool, but they're not really losing anything. If you're smuggling heroin over the border, using a privacy coin doesn't make it any easier to sneak that past the dogs, right? It's
Mhm.
still there. It's still a physical object. There's still people walking around selling this stuff. None of that has changed. A privacy coin doesn't change that at all. It's just the equivalent of what cash is today.
Mhm. Right, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how heavy the that privacy stuff gets adopted here. Personally, I think I thought it would be a little bit more adopted than it already is today. But maybe it's kind of the next boom that'll happen, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, it's one of those where you have the enthusiasts who have gotten into it early, but for the most part, it's there's a lot of usage that people are simply looking for the lowest fees in a lot of
Mhm.
cases, and privacy coins have overhead, and there's no easy for solution for that right now. And but in the future, again, like all of this stuff is going to get better, and I push for it. Like I actively advocate for privacy stuff to be incorporated in different projects, DeFi projects, everything, because I just see it as being one of those that if we don't take care of it, it'll end up kind of like the early protocols of the internet. Certain things like, for example, email, where it was trust based for the most part, and you could forge an email from anybody and send it, and it would look like it came from somebody else, right? Whoever you wanted it to, right?
Hmm.
That was a protocol decision that was made in the very early days when it didn't matter, and then we see later on, decades down the line, it matters big time. And they're doing all kinds of patchwork now to try to get it, and it doesn't work with each other. Same type of thing is like, we need to address this now, because if we don't, if we allow it to be fully transparent as it is now forever, then systems will be built around that as a basis. It'll be harder to shift into privacy type aspects in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I hear you, man. It's going to be interesting. So I got a couple, kind of more personal questions for you. So, man, like I said, I think that uh, there's a lot of interest in, you know, what blockchain engineers do, like yourself, like on a day to day basis. What does your typical day look like as a blockchain engineer? Here I have my thoughts on, what I think an engineer. I'm just seeing somebody just mashing away at the keyboard, like creating all these lines of code, back testing things. How much? I don't know if you'd feel comfortable sharing, at least kind of as a blockchain professional. What does your day kind of look like?
Yeah, I can share some of that, and it varies a lot actually. Like I would tell you, a couple of years ago, and this would be actually before Nervos, when I was working on a previous project, it was pretty much every day just doing two things. So it was researching and reading stuff, and then mashing away at the keyboard for a long period of time for the rest of it to just crank out code. And then today it's a little bit different. I have a slightly different role where I'm interacting with a lot more people. I'm doing things like this interview. And so I'm doing a lot more research involved. I'm reading a lot of things. I'm reading white papers. I'm reading just documents about what's going on in the industry. I'm really just trying to keep a handle on everything while I also write code. And it's very, very difficult, especially in a bull market. Like, this is the downside of a bull market for an industry professional. Like, there's money and possibilities being thrown around everywhere, right? There's opportunity in every single direction. But to truly remain an expert in the field, and for me, this means not only being in touch with the technology itself, but being in touch with all the developing technology that's going out there. Also trying to keep up with what's going on right in regulation. Where's the industry actually headed? Even the fun stuff, right? NFTs. Like, I need to know this stuff too. Even if I'm not investing in it, I need to see where the industry is going. And it's a tremendous amount of information to take in. It's actually very difficult. I have gotten burned out several times just trying to keep up with all the reading, because there's just not enough hours in the day to really keep up with that. So I mean, that's my daily thing. It's all over the place. There's
Yeah.
some weeks where I don't even write a single line of code. There might be weeks where that's my primary focus. There might be times where I'm just doing stuff that's really out of the mix, well, like making videos or making new materials, helping other people make videos about the materials, training people on different technology and trying to help them to understand. It's all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting stuff. Just for me, that's just kind of something that I've always been kind of fascinated by. Maybe just hearing a little insight, and I kind of figured that continuing education. I mean, you can go to school for something, learn everything about it, but after the fact, like especially when it comes to this industry, you have to constantly be learning new stuff and just keeping your finger on the pulse. So yeah, that's it, man. That sounds like you stay pretty busy.
Yeah, I do. But what you said there, I just want to quickly touch on that about
Yeah.
continuing your education. In the past, several decades ago, I get the feeling that people probably went to school, and then for the most part, a lot of them, I'm talking about my parents' generation, they chose a path where they got all their basically all their new information came from a TV screen or something. I kind
Mhm.
of think that that's dead. That's a dying breed. Uh, we have technology at our fingertips. The entire world's knowledge is basically on the internet, and that's in the palm of your hand at this point. If you're not utilizing it, if you're not learning on a daily basis, you're a dinosaur. You're going to go extinct.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with this stuff. Oh man. Well, we're coming up on an hour here. I just want to be respectful of your time, but I just had a couple more quick questions for you, just kind of piggybacking off what I just asked you. For like someone like myself, I'm a cryptocurrency enthusiast. I don't necessarily, I should say, I want to better understand how code and stuff like that works, and maybe even dabble in creating some of my own code, maybe to basically build a simple bot or something like that. Uh, for a very basic, person like myself, is there anything that you would recommend? Um, any type of coding software, or I hear like terms like Rust and what are the few Python being thrown around. Is there anything for a complete newbie, uh, maybe that you could point out, or like would be a good starting point?
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of a tough one because when I first learned, it was a completely different set of materials. Everything that's available now is new and better, and I haven't really been exposed to it because I already knew it. But
Sure.
usually, I think the first step is actually to pick a project that you want to do. What do you actually want to accomplish? If you don't have a purpose, if you're just saying, I want to just learn, it's very difficult to actually progress. You need a target on where you're actually aiming. So figure out what that first project is. And in most cases, for most people, it's something that's going to be web based. And
Hmm.
because that's one that's really pretty easy to get into when you talk about the general scope of difficulty with programming languages in general. The web stuff, you can see results immediately. You can build a quick web page, and all of a sudden it's doing things. And then you start to throw in JavaScript, and all of a sudden it's interactive. It's actually moving a little bit rather than just being static. And then JavaScript being one of the most popular languages in the world, you can do all kinds of stuff. And in many cases, when you're talking about these bots, the SDKs involved, they almost always have a JavaScript SDK, which you'll be able to transfer that knowledge directly over to. Or in some cases, that's the only thing they support. Python's a good language too. Definitely, I would actually say Python is a superior language to JavaScript. And Rust is my favorite language, but those two are typically a little bit more advanced in some regards.
Hmm.
Python is great. Rust is really great, but it's definitely harder. And so again, it comes back to the project. What are you actually trying to do? Look at that first, because like JavaScript, I don't really like JavaScript that much. I think it's a pretty bad language because it was built at a time when it was supposed to do something very simple, and then it was kind of shoehorned into this global phenomenon where now powers the entire internet. It was never intended for this, and because of that, it's a very, very strange language in some regard. But it's got so much support behind it, so many great resources that you can't ignore that. I mean, if you want to learn, it's one of the most easy languages to find examples on and materials to learn with. So, I mean, I'd probably recommend it in that regard.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was kind of. I mean, that's kind of all I got, man. And I think we're running a little bit long at this point. So I just want to go ahead and thank you for coming on today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always love when you host Twitter Spaces. You just do a phenomenal job at educating the community, uh, like no other. So thanks again for coming on. Folks, if you guys want, please follow Jordan on Twitter. This is his Twitter handle. So give him a follow. And thanks again, Jordan, for coming on the show today. And we'll hope to have you on soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.